Today, we're diving into a story about the dark side of America's open roads. It's about a really chilling pattern of violence that, believe it or not, hides in plain sight. We're going to look at one specific, unsolved case, the murder of Taddemika McHenrey, and how it pulls back the curtain on a much, much bigger problem.
Think about Interstate 40. It's just this massive ribbon of asphalt that stretches clear across the country. It's supposed to be a symbol of freedom, of connection. For millions of people, it's just a constant flow of anonymous cars and trucks, day in and day out.
But here's the thing. It's also a place where someone can just disappear. A place where a predator can move from one state to the next, almost like a ghost, using the very highway system that connects all of us to hide the most awful crimes.
And on that specific date, that feeling of highway anonymity was just shattered for one family. And a grim pattern that had been lurking in the shadows for a while really started to come into sharp focus.
It all starts, as these stories so often do, with a discovery. It was a quiet Saturday morning at a place literally designed for travelers to rest. But someone was about to uncover a truly horrifying scene.
So a truck driver pulls into a rest area in Caddo County, Oklahoma. It's around 9:30 in the morning. He spots something under a tree, and it's a body. It was later determined that she died from multiple stab wounds. The scene is public, but it's also just isolated enough for a quick, brutal crime and an even faster getaway.
Pretty quickly, investigators were able to identify the victim, but her story revealed a life lived on the fringes, which, tragically, made her incredibly vulnerable. Her name was Taddemika McHenrey. She was only 23 years old, and she was from nearby Oklahoma City. She was known to live a transient, high-risk kind of life, and she often spent time at the very truck stops that line I-40. Now, this next part is absolutely crucial. Because of her situation, nobody had filed a missing person report. Her disappearance went completely unnoticed until her body was found.
What's really disturbing now is that investigators suspected right away this probably wasn't a one-off incident. Her death felt like just one piece of a much larger, much more terrifying puzzle. Okay, take a look at this timeline here. By the middle of 2004, an analyst in Oklahoma had already flagged a pattern of women being found murdered along the I-40 corridor. Then, Taddemika's death in August. It fits right smack in the middle of this spike, just as similar killings were continuing across 4 different states. And the similarities, they're just killing. As you can see, the victims were often transient women with connections to truck stops. Their bodies were found right off the highway, in places like rest areas. And the cause of death was always violent, strangulation, stabbing, and it always looked like a quick disposal. Taddemika's case, sadly, checked every single box.
So you have to ask yourself, how does someone get away with this, time and time again? Well, the answer really lies in the nature of the highway itself. Investigators have basically put together what they call a grim playbook. It starts with step 1. The predator makes contact at a truck stop. Step 2. The crime itself happens while they're mobile, on the road. And finally, step 3. The body is dumped in a completely different area, often crossing county or even state lines, specifically to confuse the investigation. And this is exactly why these cases go cold. The killer's mobility creates these jurisdictional nightmares. Whose case is it? The police where she was picked up or where her body was found? The highway gives the killer total anonymity, forensics evidence is almost non-existent, and as we saw with Taddemika, the victims often aren't reported missing for days, weeks, or sometimes ever. This cluster of cases, including Taddemika McHenrey's, became so alarming that it finally kicked off a major federal response. The problem was clearly way bigger than any one state could handle. So, in 2009, the FBI launched the Highway Serial Killings Initiative, and its whole purpose is to connect the dots between all these different local law enforcement agencies to share information and hunt down killers who use the highway system to find victims and cover their tracks.
And the scale of this problem is just staggering. Right now, the HSK Initiative's database has the unsolved homicides of roughly 200 people, all of them linked to our nation's highways.
So, all of this brings us back to where we started. With this huge national effort, where does that leave Taddemika's case today?
Well, nearly 2 decades later, Taddemika McHenrey's murder is still an active, unsolved homicide. Her killer has never been found.
There's a key insight from the investigation that just sums it all up perfectly. Mobility and anonymity on interstates enable these crimes, often delaying justice for years or decades. Think about that. Those two things, mobility and anonymity, they're the predator's greatest weapons. But this does leave us with one last lingering thought. With the incredible advances we're seeing in DNA analysis and genetic genealogy, could these modern tools finally cut through all that anonymity of the past? Could justice for Taddemika and for hundreds of others finally be on the horizon?
And this is so important. If you have any information, no matter how small you think it might be, on the murder of Taddemika McHenrey, please contact the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation. You know, sometimes a single phone call is all it takes to finally close a chapter that's been left open for far, far too long.